Greetings, everyone. This is Professor Regina Garcia, and I am with you today to talk a little bit about summary writing. In summary writing, it is important that we keep our focus on the main points. So you will be tasked with finding the thesis and those key main ideas that will go towards supporting what it is that the writer or the creator of the media is trying to show or prove. According to dictionary.com, don't you just love the internet? A summary is, as a noun, a comprehensive and usually brief abstract, recapitulation, or compendium of previously stated facts or statements. And so, just, in a nutshell, a summary is a reflection of the key main ideas of any form of media. Because of that, a summary should be brief and comprehensive or concise. That is to say, it doesn't need to be long. It really shouldn't be any longer than the work that you are attempting to summarize, unless that work is symbolic. And so, in your case, it won't be. If you're in my English class, in this assignment, your work will be pretty straightforward. And so you will be attempting to make the information more succinct and easier to understand. One of the most important components of the summary is that, or the most important objectives of the summary is that you are able to look back at that summary and understand what the writer or the creator was trying to make clear in their writing or in their work. And so just always be aware of that what you're writing should not necessarily be longer than what the work that you're summarizing. There are a few exceptions to that, and we actually might be looking at one of them today, but that's the case. So it needs to be compiled of main points of key ideas, and it should be brief and comprehensive. It should be concise. In a nutshell, and I like to use that phrase in a nutshell because a lot of times people sometimes think that the summary is just taking a work and changing the words to words that you know and just presenting it, that there is not really a rhyme or reason or really clear organizational pattern that should go into the writing of a summary, but there actually is, especially when you are writing an academic summary, something that will be included in a paper or perhaps as a standalone requirement from your professor. So, in a nutshell, again, the summary should contain crucial information presented in your own words, but credited to the writer. So, after you would put it in your own words, or while you're putting it in your own words, you have to be careful to make sure that it doesn't sound like your opinion, that it is the intellectual conception of the person that has written it or created it. As such, the first sentence of a summary should really reflect the title of the work and the author's name if available. And sometimes the author's name is not available, but many times it is. So if it's not available, you might indicate where it comes from. But you do absolutely need to make sure that if the name is available, that you include it in that first sentence, as well as the title of the work, and maybe even some other identifying information, like if it's important for the reader to understand where the work was pulled from, you might include that in that first sentence as well. And sometimes people also include the topic in the first sentence. What is the overall topic of the reading? And so you might say, well, how do I determine what the topic of the reading is? Well, you would just consider what the writer is talking about or who the writer is talking about. And so you'll get to kind of see that in our next slide or in our next screen. It will identify what the topic or who the topic actually is. Okay. Or the topic can appear in the next sentence, in that second sentence, but it really is up to you. It is really based on your writing style. The second sentence should address what exactly the author is trying to prove or to show. The topic plus, so that topic you came up with or you identified, plus what the writer is trying to prove, and the academic term for that is the controlling idea. The controlling idea is what the writer is trying to show or prove to the reader. Is called the controlling idea. So when you put the topic together with the controlling idea, you get the thesis. It's kind of like math, and I'm not a math teacher, but I know this math, that the topic plus the controlling idea creates the thesis, which is important to remember, not just for this, but as you go forward in your writing and you have to construct your thesis, you have to identify, what you're talking about, and then that overarching idea. What is it that you are trying to prove? In this case, however, we are looking at what the writer of the original work is trying to prove. Because there is, as we will talk about more, no place for your opinion in a summary. So we're going to use a work that is actually familiar, probably to most of you. It is a familiar nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty by Mother Goose. And I pulled the 1810 version because this version actually has some verbiage that we're not used to using. You don't hear people talk like this much, so it will be a greater incentive for us to make clear what that verbiage is actually saying, what that verbiage is actually, indicating. Okay. So the 1810 version reads, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 80 men and 80 more cannot place Humpty Dumpty as he was before. Okay. And then I have a little picture down there, photo credit William Wallace Dinslow. But of course, Humpty Dumpty, we give that tribute to Mother Goose. Okay. And so with that information, you want to go on and create the introductory sentences of your summary. And your first two sentences, we've talked about what's in them, but they should look like this. In the poem Humpty Dumpty by Mother Goose, Goose addresses the tragic demise of Gooseland citizen Humpty Dumpty. Sentence 2. In this popular children's poem, the author attempts to show that despite Humpty's trouble, the efforts of well-intentioned friends could not save him. Okay, so let me say that again. In this popular children's poem, the author attempts to show that despite Humpty's trouble, the efforts of well-intentioned friends could not save him. And that is the thesis. So the topic is the demise of Humpty Dumpty. Okay, and the controlling idea is that his friends could not save him from his demise. Okay, so those are examples of what the first two sentences of a summary on Humpty Dumpty might look like. In the third sentence of the summary, what you want to do is identify the strategy that the writer or the creator is going to use to prove the point. The point being that Humpty Dumpty could not be saved after his fall. Okay, so how can this happen? What are some strategies that writers may include to make their point? And I've made a list, and of course, all of these are not found in Humpty Dumpty. Okay, but in your reading, you might see that the writer has used certain things in order to prove that point. Okay, and we will call these uh, these 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 elements or these strategies, maybe even rhetorical strategies, because they are strategies that are used to convince the reader to a certain way of thinking, or to show a reader a certain reality. Okay, so I have strategies listed here. Providing description. A writer might provide description in order to tell that story, or use personal example, provide a historical context. And as you go through other readings, you might, for example, if we were doing I Have a Dream by Dr. Martin Luther King, he actually begins that iconic speech by providing a historical context of the issues, or the path, the journey of African Americans, or people of African descent in the United States. So he begins by providing this historical context. Okay, providing a narrative, and we just got through writing our own narratives. If you're in my class, we just got through writing our own narratives, and so we recognize that as a potential strategy to show a reader something. Using analogies and figurative language, and certainly this is a poem, so we can expect a little bit of figurative language in this. Using societal example, using research facts or statistics, using hypothetical situations, utilizing logic, or rationale, or providing rationale, and of course using illustrations. And this is just as a very limited list. There are many things that producers of literary works, and even different art forms and whatnot, there are many things that they may use in order to get a point across. So the third sentence of a summary on Humpty Dumpty might read something like, the writer makes her case by providing a straightforward narrative of the events that transpire. Okay? To the point. Okay. So you got the first three sentences. So then you really kind of want to get into the actual summary itself. And so in the sentences that follow, identify the key ideas that support the thesis. So there are some things that you should be sure to do or not to do. Okay. You should not put your opinion in the summary. Okay. So if you were summarizing Humpty Dumpty, for example, you might say, well, Humpty Dumpty really, you might want to say Humpty Dumpty deserved to fall off that wall because he had no business, okay. You know how we talk. All right. So, but that's not the place for your opinion. Sometimes your opinions come out when you are doing other forms of writing in conjunction with the writing being dealt with, but you would not include your opinion in the summary portion. Okay. You should be sure to give the writer or the creator credit for the ideas. These are not your ideas. You should not be trying to summarize your ideas. You are summarizing the ideas of the writer. Um, and you need to use language that indicates that that they're not your ideas, that they are someone else's. So you might begin your sentences, you know, depending on, how long the summary is, you might use one or more of these. Okay. According to the writer, the author begins by explaining. He or she asserts that. Goose, I'm using her surname, goes on to suggest. Next, Goose presents. Okay. And so what we have here are just some different ways you might start off your sentences, depending on where they are within the summary. Of course, Humpty Dumpty is very short. And so the summary will not be long at all. And so I might have one or two sentences that kind of encapsulate or provide summary of that poem. Okay. Also, when referencing the writer or the creator, after you give that initial name in the first sentence, you should use the last name when referencing the author or the creator of the media. What you should not do is call that author or creator by his or her first name. I like to say, uh, they're not your cousin. Okay, so you have to, when you're in an academic paper, you want to, follow the rules of etiquette and use the last name. And in that way, you are also you're reminding yourself that this is a third person writing, because you won't be using you or I. Okay, you will be talking about what the writer is talking about in a more succinct and clearer format. Clarity sometimes makes the summary a little bit longer if you're trying to make clear what the writer is saying, despite maybe any language differences and whatnot. So your sentences in this part, in this body, should be in a nutshell sentences as much as possible. If you do have to quote, you want to be sure that you use quotation marks. You say things like according to the writer, quote, blah, 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 end quote, um, that kind of thing. But if you have something as short as Humpty Dumpty, then you're probably not going to use quotes at all, or if you do, you might quote a couple of words within a paraphrase sentence. So don't don't over quote. Okay, over quoting actually indicates that you don't understand what's being said, and I've read some papers like that where I don't really understand, but I'm gonna change this word, and they go through and right click and find a synonym for it, so they can claim it not to be plagiarized. It's still plagiarized. I just want you to know that as well. When you paraphrase, you have to actually like restructure it. Okay, restructure it and put it in context, a context that makes it clear. So we're looking at the original text again. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 80 men and 80 more cannot place Humpty as he was before. Okay. And so when we go forward from that, and we know I use this one, but we know that the version that we are accustomed to hearing, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So this original version is in an earlier form of English, so we want to make it a summary that is palatable for people who speak English in this time, so that they will understand really what happened to Humpty. Okay, so now this is the paraphrase, two sentence paraphrase. Okay, I probably could have done it in one, but I am who I am. Okay. Goose explains that Humpty Dumpty's Goose explains that Humpty Dumpty's fall from the wall left him with severe injuries and brokenness, and palace first responders, despite their best efforts, were unsuccessful. He ultimately died from his injuries. Okay, so that is the paraphrase. Now, I know some of you, there might be some contention on that. Somebody might argue, well, he could have still lived broken up. But, ladies and gentlemen, he was an egg. And if you're an egg and you're broken, I think the show is over. But that's just me. Okay. There is, I guess, some room for personal interpretation to influence the summary. Okay. I assert that if an egg breaks, it dies. Okay. There's some more I could say, but I'll leave it alone. So now let's put it together. Okay. And so what you see here is the summary put together in the poem Humpty Dumpty by Mother Goose. Goose addresses the tragic demise of Gooseland citizen Humpty Dumpty. In this popular children's poem, the author attempts to show that despite Humpty's trouble, the efforts of well-intentioned friends could not save him. The writer makes her case by providing a straightforward narrative of the events that transpire. Goose explains that Humpty Dumpty's fall from the wall left him with severe injury and brokenness, and Palace first responders, despite their best efforts, could not reassemble him. He ultimately died from his injuries. Poor Humpty. Bless his heart. Okay. So see, that's much clearer than, three score men and three score more, and it's in plain speak. You don't have to cipher through the rhyme. So much clearer. So some things to remember. Also, when you're writing this, make sure you proofread. Make sure you proofread. Grammar matters, okay? And this is an academic writing. Make sure you're using MLA format. What does that mean? That is 12-point font. That is double spaced. That the paragraphs, if you have, one or more paragraphs at that first sentence, you need to indent, okay? You know that on the left side of your paper, above your title, you're going to have that left header, and I want you to look at the samples that I give you. That will give you a guide of what your left header should look like, and then of course your right header, which will actually be in the insert page number section. If you're using Microsoft Word, I think it's plain number 3 that you click on, and then you go back to it, and right before it you type your name, your last name, and you take a space. Okay, so make sure that you have all of those elements. Just another reminder, this is third person. That means that unless you is in something that you quoted, you should not use you, yourself, and in this case, you should not use I. You're not going to be using some personal anecdote to provide introduction to the summary. So it is inappropriate for you to use I, me, or my in the summary, as well as we, okay? That kind of thing. Those are personal pronouns, and so we don't use those there. Again, unless they are in something that you've quoted. And hopefully you will not be using quotations much at all. Okay.